Hi everyone, I'm Guido Stompff, Professor of Design Thinking at Inholland University of Applied Sciences. In this short video, I will explain what frameboards are and how they are helpful to develop a frame. To start with, what is a frame? And the easiest way to explain it is that it is the perspective, how we see the world, how we interpret the things that happen, what we think that is important, what is not, what we consider problematic and what is not, and what we consider is a solution and what is not. Now, the thing is we are always viewing things differently. There are always different frames how to see things. The question is, what frames are inspiring and will result in solutions that will genuinely help us forward? One way of doing that is exploring a frame by means of a frameboard. A frameboard, in essence, is a very handy tool that helps you to explore a frame, to see if it generates nice ideas, if you understand the problem at hand, and in the end, if there are inspiring solutions so that we can say the frame is productive. What is very important is to understand that we are comparing frames by exploring them. So sticking to one frame because you're very enthusiastic about it is not the way forward. Always develop multiple frameboards. Now, how should you use a frameboard? In essence, the frameboard is guiding you through a process, through several steps that you need to fill in. And by doing that, you develop a frame, a solution, and understand the problem a little bit better. In this process, you can go back every now and then. You have to fill it in iteratively. And there are a couple of ingredients that you have to fill in, like the ID, the name, the frame, the description, and so on. What is important to understand right now is that there is an area outside, the colored area, which is the frame itself, which you will develop. And there's a white area within the frame, which is the best ID that you got within the frame. That's the thing you will present in the end. In order to develop a frameboard, you have to fill it in a specific order. First the gray area, then the white area. By the way, you can download this template at the website. First, the frame, the outside part. And you're going to start with the stakeholders, the key problems they have, the approach you consider is appropriate to solve it, and you will develop alternative ideas. Subsequently, you will go to the inner area. And in the inner area, you develop the best ideas. Let me explain all these steps one by one. The first step is you have to decide for whom are you designing it. And this mostly is a user, the user of a product or a service you're developing. However, it's also possible that there are other stakeholders that are even more important than just the user. In those cases, you have to design for your core stakeholder, for instance, a client. Let's stick with the user. And it is important that you empathize with the persons you are designing for. You need to stand in their shoes, feel a bit the way they feel, and see the world the way they see it. Now, that's very hard when you're using abstract language, like a target group, like women who are older than 60 years old, or something like that. Much better is that you make it personal, that you develop what we sometimes name a persona, someone you can imagine with a real face, with a real name. Like in this example, for example, we can say that we're not talking about women above 60, but we're talking about Mathilde, who used to work as a manager and loves to read, but unfortunately feels quite lonely as her husband died and her children are living abroad. Once you settled on the user you're designing for, the next step is what is actually the problem you're trying to solve for this person. And it's essential that you try to be very concise and precise and decide what is the key problem, what's the most problematic thing. Very often we tend to have lists of requirements and wishes and stuff like that. But actually by having these lists, you quite overlook what is really at stake. So decide on what is the key problem. The next step is, once you decided on the problem, is how could we solve it? What is the approach that we could use to solve this for this user or for this specific stakeholder? It's not about very specific ideas. It's more a line of reasoning. Like for instance, Matilda, who is very lonely, we want her to connect with other people in a very unobtrusive way. Not like a dating site or something like that, but more something that happens because they're doing something else, like having a hobby or something like that. Once you settled on an approach, you can generate solutions. And this is the classic brainstorming session you have to do within developing a frame board. And with every brainstorm session, it's important that you define a how can you. That's a question that starts any brainstorm session because it invites you to come up with tangible solutions. Like for instance, how can you connect Mathilda with someone she likes to talk to? Now, once you have some how can you, just do the brainstorm. Come up with loads of ideas ranging from, for instance, an app that helps to connect with other people, or have a greet and meet event, or do something on holidays. I don't know. Once you have loads of ideas and it's a bit hard to get new ideas, you can stop. Now the question is, when you take an overlook at who for whom you're designing and what the key problem is, what is probably the best idea you have defined on your frame board? And this idea you will take it to the next step. You take it to the wide area and we're going to develop this single idea. This idea we're going to develop into a real solution, something that we can present to others very tangibly. So the first thing we're going to do, the first step, is to describe what we have on our minds. What is the essence of the idea that we just popped up with? Could be something like, for instance, we need a digital book clip for Matilda so that she can explore books, read about authors, and in between have chats with people she doesn't know yet. And hopefully it will enable her to get new friends. Once you have this description, always make it visual. How would something like that look like? The thing is not that it should be really good visual. Actually, anything hand drawn will do, but make sure that it's clear what the generic idea is. For instance, for this book club, and you want to explain that it's going to be digital, you're going to show a tablet PC, because that's what the kind of things that most elderly like to have, and show already in the visual. This is going to be very simple, low-tech approach, very user-friendly. Once you settled on a description and a visual, it's time to do the marketing of your ID. We need a catchy name, because names that are catchy, that stick, are remembered easily. If you meet people 1 week later, they still should be able to remember the specific name for that ID. If they can't remember the name, they will find it hard to remember the ID. So let's do the marketing and let's do it properly. For instance, we can call this ID we just developed for Matilda Book Talks. And a nice tagline to add to it would be something like your favorite book club at home. The last step is filling in the value proposition. And the value proposition, well, there are thick books on it, but in essence is nothing more than a very brief description of what it is and why it adds value. Now, there are many ways how you can formulate a value proposition. I discovered the hard way that this formula is actually really helpful. Name helps target group to goal by something unique. I'm going to give an example. Book Talks helps elderly, lonely people to meet new friends by starting and joining local book clubs from their homes. That is a value proposition. Now, if you can't fill it in as briefly as is done right now within this formula, very often there's something wrong. You are not very clear on your idea and why it adds value for specific persons. Now you filled in the complete template of the frameboard, and very often that's the end of the frameboard session. You just present the frame board to others and that's it, which is good. However, if you have to present it, for instance, to the real stakeholders, to your client or to real users, make sure you make it presentable. So don't try to show the frame board itself, but take the essential idea out of it and turn it into a poster or a presentation to present. With that poster or presentation, do a show and share to stakeholders, to users, to your coaches, whoever might be interested. And by showing multiple ideas, more than just one, you get really good discussions on how to frame the situation at hand. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it.